You don't need a holiday to show someone you care. 1-800-Flowers marches on all year round. Send clovers for St. Patrick's Day, red, white, and blue roses for Liberty Week, or maybe even some in replacement for a Hug a Newsman Day. Get 15% off your purchase when you go to the FBIApodcast.com webpage and click our 1-800-Flowers.com coupon link at the bottom of the page, or go to 1-800-Flowers.com and enter the code FBIAPodcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
I am Kyle, and today we are joined by Brett Kollman, the absurdly talented writer from Battle Red Blog, which is the SB Nation community Houston Texans team page and blog. Brett is here today to talk the 2014 Texans, the upcoming year, and all the good stuff about the team with us. Thank you for joining us today, Brett.
Thank you. Absurdly talented. That's a lot to live up to, I will say.
Well, that's what it says on your masthead, so,
Yep.
you know. Your editor, rather than necessarily saying editing staff, it just says hate mail goes here, which I like that. That saves the writers. That is kind. Since this is the first time for a lot of the people on your community and your page to hear your voice and get to know a little bit more about you, let's ask some questions about you to start this off. First thing we'd like to know, how long have you been a fan of the team?
I've been a fan of the team, over a decade. I mean, however long they've been a team, over a decade now. My dad, he worked in Houston while I was growing up as a kid. He works for BP in the oil industry, so naturally Houston is one of the hubs of the oil industry in America, and I didn't really like the Raiders, didn't like the Niners, didn't like the Chargers, just kind of latched onto the Texans. They were the new hotness in the league, and I was an impressionable young child, and it just kind of grew from there, and I became a masochist and supported a terrible team for most of my life. I wasn't a bandwagoner, so I wasn't going to join with the Colts. I have a little bit more self-respect than that.
Oh.
Can't help but feel that's directed my way.
Only a little bit.
Known Colts fan. Well, that's all right. I'd feel better, except I'm from the LA area and I'm a Colts fan, so people are like, yeah, how'd you come by that? And then I have to explain it, and then they just look at me like, oh, stupid. All right, cool. Yeah, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I've been through 3 number 1 picks, so.
Yeah. It's working out right now, so I right now, at least, I got no complaints. We'll see how things work out in, 20 years, because...
Yeah, after Luck's won 3 Super Bowls, poor you. You play the world's smallest violin for the frickin' Colts fan, getting 2 once-in-a-generation quarterbacks back-to-back. While we sit there with Matt Schaub and Brian Hoyer and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Doesn't it feel like it's cheating?
It is cheating. Anybody says they didn't tank is lying. They tanked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they definitely did. I'm a Bears fan, and one thing that I constantly complain about is how the Packers got to go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and how I think it is just complete BS that nobody should be able to do that.
At least with the Packers, they had Favre, and they sat Rodgers on the bench for a few years, but the Colts didn't have anybody. Manning had a neck issue. They were a bad team. They saw
an
Luck
awful
there.
Team.
They knew he was there. They were fighting Jacksonville for the number 1 pick all year long. And they won, and I just hate them forever for it.
Surprisingly, that year was the first year that 3 teams from the same division, I believe, picked in the top 6 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. And what's funny is Blaine Gabbert was actually picked 1 pick ahead of J.J. Watt in that year, and it was kind of their own fault. And so I don't really have any qualms about Jacksonville being terrible, because if you take Blaine Gabbert with a top 10 pick, you just kind of deserve it.
Yeah, that didn't end out too well, and I affectionately refer to Blake Bortles as Blaine Gabbert 2.0. When I said that to the Jacksonville writer, there was this pause. He's just like, whoa, Dude, and you could tell that I just laid a revelation on him that he did not yet know, but as soon as I said it, he's like, that makes too much sense for me to just dismiss it offhand. And I kind of ruined his day a little bit with that. I also like how we're doing the personal question, and in no time whatsoever, it turned into both of you guys going like, man, you know what? F the Colts. Just F them.
It's a defense mechanism. Okay, I have to say it. You know what? You went 2-14, and you still beat the Texans in Indianapolis.
Oh, he talks about that all the time. That's
Yes,
like
I
his
do.
go-to. When he talks about the Texans, he's like, don't worry, because you still haven't beat us in Indianapolis.
They could trade 3 first-round picks for Trent Richardson, have Luck out there in a wheelchair with no offensive line, and they would still win in Indianapolis. Because T.Y. goddamn Hilton would get 300 yards on us every year, like he always does. I am sick of him. I am sick of T.Y. Hilton.
All right, we gotta.
This is easily going to be the best interview we've done so far because I am enjoying the smack talk and just wash me with your judgment. Oh, it is beautiful. Okay, let's get back and talk about you because we're gonna cover all this and we can, if you want, towards the end we could just rip on the Colts for a while. I will take it. There are so many T-Rich jokes to be made, so many, and I love all of them. Getting back to you, what is it that drove you to be a professional? I mean, you're doing writing, and then also, without getting too much into it, because we all know how the NFL loves me and Ron, and you know, we don't want you to be guilty by proxy, but you are working for the NFL yourself.
Yeah, I do freelance work for NFL Network, while also doing freelance work for Time Warner Sportsnet at the same time, because when you do TV in LA, nobody's ever staffed. It's all freelance. So yeah, I am proud to call the NFL my employer. Best job I ever had. And I can honestly say I mean, if you think it would be great to work for the NFL, it is. It's a great job, great environment. They really take care of their employees. I love every second of it.
And what is it that kind of got you into the mindset that I need to do this for work? Was it just because you can? Because if they told me, hey, we're going to pay you, enough money to support your family, and by the way, you watch football and talk football all day, there's not a lot of thought process that needs to go into that before I say yes.
There's a few different reasons. One, I'm not good at anything else. I can't do a cubicle job. I am good at 3 things. It's talking football, talking Texans, and making television. So if I was going to do any other job, I'd probably be horrible at it.
I also want to know, what is your strongest memory of being a Texans fan? Normally we say of the team, but I'm getting the impression that as a Texans fan, there might be outside influences even. Good or bad, strongest memory?
Oh, God, so many. I mean, you got the Rosencopter. You got driving 80 yards with T.J. Yates as your quarterback on the road in Cincinnati to get Andre Johnson a playoffs for the first time in his career. He got Andre Johnson's playoff touchdown, torching, I think it was Vontae Davis, I want to say? No, it wasn't Vontae Davis. It was Pac-Man Jones is who he torched. But he has torched Vontae Davis pretty much every year until he joined Vontae Davis, the one place where Vontae can go where he's safe now. Then you got, of course, J.J. Watt being the Defensive Player of the Year twice. You got Matt Schaub finally getting playoff victory, even though he wasn't even really the one that did it. You got Arian Foster putting up 250 yards in the Colts, Week 1, 2010, announcing himself to the world. I mean, so many good memories, so many awful, terrible, heartbreaking memories. Jacoby Jones dropping the punt against the Ravens, giving them the ball on the 2-yard line, ruining our season. I mean, God, there's so many bad memories of Jacoby Jones alone. It's been a roller coaster.
I'm going to throw in a strong memory of mine, since we're throwing strong memories that seemingly are all Colts related. My strong memory of the Texans is, okay, Matt Schaub, you can't throw that many pick sixes. We're sitting you for this other guy who throws a pick six, like, immediately. It's like, oh, well, keep the streak going. Way to go, fellas. All right, champions.
Yeah, I think my favorite memory of that year was it was, I think, 4 weeks in a row leading up to the game in prime time against the Niners, where it's like, oh yeah, Matt Schaub's throwing a pick six in 4 straight games to lead off the season, like the record's 5. And his second pass of the game, first drive, first quarter, he throws a pick six. And the disbelief, like not even just in the commentators, but of fans that hate the Texans, it was a surreal moment. And I think that was when you kind of knew that year really wasn't going to go well. And they lost 16 straight games, whatever it was, or 14 straight games. Awful day.
Since we're sharing the strongest memory thing, I'm a big defense guy. I'm a Bears fan. Obviously, J.J. Watt has become the face of the franchise at this point, and we all love him. Despite Kyle being a Colts fan, everybody loves J.J. Watt.
How could you not? How could you not? He earns it every time, and he's a cool guy. He's awesome. How do you not love him?
My favorite highlight, I guess, is the best way to put it for J.J. Watt. It was when he returned that pick for a touchdown against the Bengals in that playoff game. I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
For a rookie defensive end to be that productive all year, and then he picked off the Bengals in that game, and he returned that thing for a touchdown, and he was just so classy about it. And even after the game, he was like, I read it, I got lucky, it fell right in my lap, and I returned it for a touchdown. And he was like, and then afterwards I walked up and said, hey man, sometimes it just falls that way. And I think the biggest reason why we like him so much is not only is he such a great player and so productive and so interesting to watch, but he's also a really good person. J.J. Watt is pretty much at the center point of most of my favorite Texans plays. So
yeah, he's quickly becoming like one of the favorite guys in the entire state. he's an amazing person.
And he's even nice to, fans of the other teams. He'll joke around with everyone. He seems like a genuinely friendly guy, just happy with his lot in life, happy in general, and wants, just enjoying himself.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that he's immensely talented.
Yes.
I remember his rookie season. I think it was 2011. If he's been in the league that long now. I think he had 5.5 sacks throughout the regular season, and he showed some flashes here and there. Mario Williams went down in week 5, so there wasn't really any great pass rushers on the team besides Connor Barwin, basically. And then the playoffs happened, and it became the J.J. Watt show. And I think that was when Wade Phillips and everybody else realized, like, whoa, we might have something here. Because in that Bengals game, he had the pick six. He also had like 12 tackles, 2.5 sacks, like I think 4 tackles for loss. Like that was the game that I look back on where we first saw the real J.J. Watt, what J.J. Watt was going to become. And of course, we got eliminated the next week against Baltimore. And again, he had a fantastic game, another 2.5 sacks. He led the playoffs in sacks that season, I believe, even though he got knocked out in the divisional round. And then you go into the offseason optimistic, and then all of a sudden Wade Phillips starts saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer in training camp of his sophomore season. You're like, okay, let's tone it down, Wade. And then 2012 happened, and he had arguably the greatest statistical defensive season in the history of the sport. And you say, okay, Wade, maybe you're right. Maybe he's pretty good. Then 2013 happens. He's even better. And then 2014 happens, and he's even better than that. He's the first player in the history of the game to get 2 20-plus sack seasons, and he's been in the league for 4 years. 4 years. Reggie White never did that. Bruce Smith never did that. Lawrence Taylor never did that. In their entire careers, Bruce Smith played almost 20 years. And in 4 seasons, he did that. I mean, he is special with a capital S. He's amazing. A truly amazing player.
Normally I would kind of jump in and, do like, all right, we're going to talk about last season. But since you're on J.J. Watt, let's just go ahead and wrap that up before we move on. Definitely a big part of the defense, but this last year he became part of the offense even more. And it was weird to see, like, the last notable thing I can remember a defensive player becoming a part of the offense in that way, like in goal line packages and stuff, was Mike Vrabel for the Patriots. And being a linebacker, lining up in that tight end position and going out and catching passes. Kind of give us a reason, your opinion, why that was kind of brought in. Was that due to his skills? Was this a fan service thing, or was it depleted talent at that specific scenario, role, position on the offense. I mean, why would we take a risk on that to see something like that? Because everybody knows that playing defense and delivering the hit is different than being on offense and facing the hit.
Well, you mentioned Mike Vrabel, and he actually became the Texans linebacker coach last season. So I have to think he had a pretty big amount to do with it. He's like, hey, I did it. JJ can do it. He's 6'6" with 11-inch hands. Let him go get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd love to think Vrabel had a lot of influence on that. And, I mean, he played tight end in college before he switched defensive end, started out at Central Michigan as a tight end. So, you know, he has experience. He's already probably the best red zone receiver on the team. So, you know, why not use him? You know, give Ryan Fitzpatrick, at the time it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Ryan Mallett as much talent as they can possibly have. I mean, God, Ryan Mallett's first career regular season touchdown throw was to J.J. Watt. And if he turns out to be something special, that's going to be on his highlight reel forever, is throwing his first touchdown in his whole career to a defensive end.
I gotta throw just that little bit of salt in while saying we gotta give the most talent available to our quarterback. Usually that doesn't mean take a defensive player. Most teams just choose to draft offense.
Well, if you're Indianapolis, yeah, you just choose to draft offense. Or if you don't feel like drafting it, you just trade a first-round pick for Trent Richardson, because that'll sure help the offense.
Yeah, that really took the air out of my sails really fast.
Not everybody can be blessed.
Well, and another thing, kind of. Another thing when it comes to J.J. Watt, you were talking, you know, he played some tight end in college, and I just, when I saw the route, and I'm real big into how people play the game as well, like what their skill set is on reading a defense, what their skill set is on lining up correctly and running the routes they're supposed to run, or, you know, covering the guy they're supposed to cover. I was just really impressed with the way that he runs his fade route. Like, because I mean, pretty much that's all he does when you put him on that package. He's going to run a fade route. That's about it. I mean, what else would you have somebody that size do? And
yeah,
so,
I mean, 6'6", 290. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, I just was really impressed by that, because you just normally don't see a guy that big. I mean, when was the last time you saw a 290-pound tight end that caught passes and didn't just block? I mean, it's amazing to me. I was really impressed with his offensive skill in general. I think that's what made me like him so much, is because, you know, a lot of these guys that are old school football players, you know, they played both sides of the football, and you just don't see that anymore. I mean, most players that are brought in have been playing the same position since they were in JV football in high school, you know, like that's, to see somebody who's like, yeah, I'll play both sides of it. What do you want me to do? Play safety? I'll do it. Like J.J. Watt would. He would go out there and be like, yeah, I'll smoosh someone out deep down the middle. I'll do it. And
I really hope they don't figure out that they can have him do that, because then he's going to light up T.Y. Hilton and turn him into a cloud of fine vapor. I mean, like, just he can.
I would be okay with that. I would be perfectly okay with T.Y. Hilton not being able to put 200 plus on the Texans every single time he plays them.
Yeah,
like we're allergic to covering T.Y. Hilton. He's the one guy in the league that, no matter what you do, I play a lot of daily fantasy football. Every time the Texans play the Colts, T.Y. Hilton can have 5 catches over the last 5 weeks. I don't care. I'm putting him in the lineup because he goes off every time. It's uncanny, really, and infuriating at the same time, but mostly uncanny.
J.J. Watt is a subject we could sit here and literally talk about forever, but let's, for the fans' purposes and their sanity, let's go into more of the 2014 review. Let's take a look back on the season. When we get done here, if everybody wants to keep listening to us talk, at the end we'll give you, you know what, we have nothing else going on today. We'll just sit here and let Kyle and you argue about who's, you know, got the most pubic hair or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let's go.
Why would anybody stick around for that?
Let's get into 2014. It was a 9-7 season for the Texans. They started strong, but ended up struggling in the middle with all the injuries. The fortunate part, at least in Kyle and I's opinion, was that the expectations were incredibly low. So the season seemed to be a little bit of a surprise for some people, especially Texans fans who were, you know, just depleted in their hope. We're going to get into all that other deep stuff later. I mean, we've already talked J.J. Watt, but we'll get into like the Andre Johnson, the QB stuff and injuries and all that. But can you briefly give us your overall thought on the 2014 season? Just real quick, was it a success? And if not, why? And can you give us anything that you thought was a success on the team?
I think the fact that they even got to 9-7 in the first place is a massive success. And I credit Bill O'Brien immensely for that. He's an amazing coach, a truly amazing coach. They didn't really get a lot of production out of their draft class. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney was hurt most of the year, and their defense was still top-notch, largely because of J.J. Watt. They had 4 different quarterbacks that played, and I actually blame the Colts on that because they broke Ryan Fitzpatrick's leg on a dirty play, and they dove at Tom Savage's knee a couple series after that. So thanks for that. They probably would have won the Colts game and went to the playoffs if Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't break his leg, ironically enough. But, you know, the fact, again, that they were even relevant in Week 17 is a truly remarkable achievement because it was not the best roster. They didn't have great quarterback play. It was just a gritty, week in, week out performance. They really hung in with every single contender they played. The only time they lost by a significant margin was against the Giants, ironically enough, and they weren't even a good team. But I was extremely proud of this team, and if he can get them with that little talent because of injuries to get to 9-7, now that they're kind of reloading throughout this offseason, they've got, you know, a decently high first-round pick. I'm really excited to see what O'Brien can get out of them in year 2. I think they do have a shot to challenge Indy as the division leader. And Indy's a great team still. I mean, they're going to be a great team as long as they have Andrew Luck quarterback. But I think Houston can be right there with them as long as Ryan Mallett doesn't mess it up.
Indy does have a lot of holes, so there's definitely the opportunity there for the Texans. If people think that Indy is truly as talented as their record indicates, I can say that is just not true. That is, you know, the same thing that was happening under Peyton Manning. The quarterback is covering up a lot of flaws. Now, Bill O'Brien being brought in, he was definitely seen as the best head coach available to be hired this past offseason. With a 7-win improvement over the previous year, that's, you know, definitely fantastic. But are there any criticisms that you're hearing from him other than the standard kind of, you know, first-year guy maybe trying to do too much?
You know, there were some times when people might say he tried to get a little bit cute, I would say. There was some overtime play calling against the Cowboys that he probably wants back, but you know, a little bit of clock management here and there, but that's just kind of new head coach stuff. I mean, I know when you were going through growing pains with Chuck Pagano, it was the same kind of thing. When you're a rookie head coach in the NFL, you have some game management hiccups here and there. But by the end of the season, I mean, he and the rest of the coaching staff were firing on all cylinders. He did get a little bit of experience as a head coach at Penn State, but he's still growing into the position. He's getting more experience, and I think he did a phenomenal job. I know I certainly couldn't be a head coach in the NFL, and the way he's able to multitask and still micromanage at the same time is baffling to me. So I really do think that any criticisms that anybody can have of him are extremely minor, and it was more of a, oh, you could have done this here, could have done that there, kind of a nitpicking more than anything. So I think in year 2, I'm extremely optimistic. I think he'll be better, the team will be better, and God willing, we can go to the playoffs again.
And recently, quarterback coach George Godsey was promoted to offensive coordinator. Essentially, it seemed like he was kind of filling that role anyway, but didn't want all of the responsibility from year 1. Now that he is labeled as the offensive coordinator, are we going to see much of anything different, or is this still Bill O'Brien's offense and this guy's just managing it in practice?
It's still O'Brien's offense. I mean, he was calling the plays last year anyway. I suspect that part of the reason why they didn't name him offensive coordinator was Bill O'Brien, he protects his guys. He wants every ounce of blame from the media. And he knew going into the year that Ryan Fitzpatrick was his quarterback. If that went south, and to be honest, there was a high likelihood it was going to be, even though Fitzpatrick had a career year numbers-wise, there was a high likelihood that wasn't going to work out. So I think he didn't want anybody to blame Godsey. I think he wanted to be the sole ownership of every ounce of criticism if there was any of the offense. So he was protecting his guy, even though he had control of the offense and he was getting a year of experience as an offensive coordinator. I thought that was a very selfless move by O'Brien to basically just say, hey, put it all on me. And it ended up going better than expected. So now he's given him the full coordinator title, which will then help him advance throughout the league if he wants to. So all of this, title movement and all you want to call it is really just Bill O'Brien protecting and supporting his guys. And I respect that a lot.
The offense definitely has some work to be done this upcoming year. Another change out at the quarterback position, Ryan Mallett is kept. Brian Hoyer is brought in, as part of the third-tier quarterback sweepstakes. Fitzpatrick is traded, letting that merry-go-round spin a little more. So what can we look forward to this year? I mean, is Bill O'Brien going to draft his guy this year? Or are we going to wait? Or is this, we've already seen who's going to be here, Ryan Mallett and Brian Hoyer and whoever else that, is on the practice squad or anything like that?
I'll tell you what, and I said this after I did a film study article when Mallett was acquired before the season. He's a franchise quarterback. I am not afraid to predict that or say that or whatever you want to call it. He is a franchise quarterback. I love everything about Ryan Mallett, the arm talent, the intelligence, the decision-making, and his one, let's call it a healthy start against Cleveland. He played extremely well, despite what the numbers say. He looked like a franchise quarterback, and I guess you can kind of relate to this as a Colts fan. You've got a good quarterback when you can watch the game and be calm. If you're not worried every time they drop back, you've got a franchise quarterback. And I wasn't worried for 1 second when I was watching Ryan Mallett play. And the Bengals game the week after, he was playing with a torn pec, so I don't really count that one at all. But the one game tape that we've got was spectacular. And Cleveland's defense, God, as a Colts fan, you should know they're no slouches. They're a good defense, and he killed them. The balls on him to go after Joe Hayden back shoulder on 4th and 3 to seal the game, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. He's got the moxie, if you want to call it, the intelligence, the leadership, the cojones, and of course the physical ability to be a franchise quarterback. And I really, really believe he is. So I think Houston got the steal with the deal they signed him to. He's probably going to end up making a lot more in a couple of years when they extend him. And I'm very, very, very high on him going into next year. I anticipate him being the fantasy football darling of the year, to be honest.
Entirely possible. Like you said, there's only really one game to reference as of right now, but it's enough to build on, especially given what else is going on at that position. Brian Hoyer showed that he can be good if he has a run game to lean heavily on, and again with the defense, but you ask him to do too much, he's going to fold. One question I do have is, last year watching the draft, I was freaking out because we're getting to the end. I'm like, nobody is taking Teddy Bridgewater. The Texans are going to get the best defender in the draft and then the best quarterback in the draft.
Oh,
and
God,
then,
you have to bring this up.
Yes, I do, because I know you guys were fist pumping like, yeah, what's up now? Day 2, suckers. And then
God,
all of a sudden the Vikings come in and made me love them forever and save the day. Would they have taken Teddy Bridgewater? And I'm guessing the answer is yes.
I have never wanted to burn an entire state to the ground more than I wanted to burn Minnesota that night. I was furious. I broke dishes. I yelled. I made people afraid of me. It was an ugly night. And I will never, ever forgive the Vikings for taking Teddy Bridgewater from me. That would have been an all-time draft. An all-time draft. You get a healthy Clowney at the time he was healthy, and the best quarterback in the draft? That's absurd. And they were that close until the Vikings swooped in. And
it was a last-minute trade, so, going into the draft, you're in that last minute. You're like, we got this. Whoa, what's this? Whoa, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
They were 2 minutes away. 2 minutes away from getting him. He was there. He was there. And you asked earlier about worst memories as a Texans fan. That was actually in the top 5 for me, to be honest. I completely forgot about it. I blocked it out of my memory after we got Mallett because I wanted to really love that. And I do love that still, but Teddy Bridgewater was there, and they messed it up. And I will never stop being salty.
That's, the Texans didn't have anything negative there. Nobody's going to trade up for one spot, especially to give a guy that much extra money. But then again, at that time, I thought that Jadeveon Clowney might come in and wreck the league. And obviously he was a disappointment, to say the least. And while nobody's ready to give up on the number 1 overall draft pick after 1 year, the microfracture surgery has to be a massive concern that can be incredibly difficult to come back from. So what is the mindset going forward with Jadeveon Clowney right now?
Well, I mean, it's kind of sad that one of the first names that comes up when people say Jadeveon Clowney is Greg Oden. Number 1 overall pick in basketball, number 1 overall pick in football. Both get microfracture surgery. One of them was never the same, and you kind of hope that the other one doesn't follow that same path. The things that give people pause about that, though, or I should say maybe give people a little bit of hope, is that Clowney reportedly had kind of a new type of microfracture surgery that is a little bit higher of a success rate. He's been going through blood flow restriction therapy, which is a technique pioneered by the military when they're rehabbing their special forces to get them back out in the field. And that basically just, the blood goes into the area, but it doesn't come out. So when you're lifting weights, almost with like a tourniquet type thing on, you can do kind of 20 to 30% of your max rep. So you're not putting as much strain on the tendons and everything like that, but it still gives you the effect as if you're maxing out every single rep. And it doubles the amount of naturally produced HGH that goes into the area. So the theory is that, I don't want to say it's like HGH doping, but the more HGH you can naturally put in that area, the more it's going to heal, the stronger it will be. So there's hope that he'll be just fine, but we'll see. They just reported yesterday that he's walking without a limp already, which is hugely optimistic. So, he's an amazing talent. When he was on the field in the preseason, he was already the best player on the field, believe it or not. And of course, J.J. Watt wasn't on the field, but he was killing people. Don't even ask Falcons fans how they felt watching him because he tore them up for the 2 series he was on there. I am very excited to see him come back if he comes back healthy. You just kind of got to hope that all these military rehab techniques work.
I definitely want to ask about the possibility of trading down with that number 1 overall. It was kind of uncertain what would be the best option. And hindsight is 2020 that now people would say, all right, well, you don't want the guy getting injured. You could have gotten more value. But as you said, that is still yet to be determined. But, the second time Houston has number 1 overall in fairly recent years, they go pass rush. And to my knowledge, teams would have easily paid 2 first-round picks for Jadeveon Clowney. There had to be a lot of fans on the page and on the site just hoping to trade down, take a quarterback, get as much out of him as possible. But do you think that it was really the best decision available, or was nobody willing to meet what the team thought was fair trade value for that number 1 overall?
I know there were offers. I know the Falcons, I believe, offered 2 firsts and a second to go up, but the Texans were holding out for another second-round pick, from what I heard at least, and they just couldn't come to an agreement. Obviously, the Falcons would be going after Clowney in that scenario. I don't know what other offers they got, but I'm sure that they were there. And it's the number 1 overall pick, and you got a generational defensive talent on the line. I have to believe that at least more than one team would want him. And I think it's easy to go back and say, oh man, yeah, they should have taken Khalil Mack. He's a beast in Oakland. Mike Mayock said he was the best player in the draft. But, at the time, I would do it all over again. Jadeveon Clowney is a great, great, great player. Nobody knew about his health issues at the time, so you can't really fault him for being taken. It's one of those things that happen. Either you're lucky or you're not, and he's just a very unlucky guy at this point in his career. So you hope that he gets healthy. If I'm the Texans, I don't regret the situation for 1 second, because it just happens. There's nothing you can do about it, and we'll see.
Even though you're struggling to keep Jadeveon Clowney healthy, you did end up upgrading on the defensive line in another way by grabbing Vince Wilfork, who is by far one of Kyle and I's favorite players as well. We really like him, but for different reasons that we love JJ Watt. We like Vince Wilfork. We just think it would be cool to go to his house and cook us some barbecue and drink some beer with the guy. He's just a cool guy, I think, in that realm. But what type
you can party with Vince Wilfork. There's no way to party with Gronk. You're going to end up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. With Vince Wilfork, it's yeah, I can hang, because we're just going to be eating a lot of food and drinking some beer, and then watching him eat even more food, because he's amazing.
What type of role do you see him kind of playing with the Texans? Now, he's older. He's not going to have as many snaps in him as he used to. And are the fan base and the writers and your peers, is everybody kind of okay with having him, even though you have the knowledge that his heart belongs to New England? That is where he's going to go back to when he retires. And is it just kind of a, thanks for coming to our team, kind of when the big kid in elementary school decides, yeah, I'll come play for your team because, you need my help, sure, I'll come do it once, but when the real basketball starts, I'm going to go back to playing varsity.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, he is a rental. He's always going to be a Patriot, and I think Texans fans understand that. He's just coming to Houston because they were the ones that were willing to pay him, and he's trying to get as much money as he can out of his career while he still has it. And I don't blame him for that one bit. He's still a great player. He's going to be a 2-down nose tackle for them, stopping the run on early downs just to get J.J. Watt into third and long situations. That's going to be his role in the team, as well as a locker room leader. And, he was one of the pinnacle leaders on that Patriots team for the last decade. And that's the role that he's going to be doing, mentoring these young guys, trying to get them into position to succeed long term, especially Lewis Mix, the nose tackle that drafted out of Notre Dame last season, who went on IR early in his rookie year. He kind of got into O'Brien's doghouse with some alleged work ethic issues, so maybe Wilfork can kind of iron that out of him a little bit, but we'll see. But, like you said, his heart's always going to be in New England, just like Andre Johnson's heart's always going to be in Houston. It's just two older guys from the University of Miami that think they still have it left, and they're going to get their paycheck while they still can. I do not blame either one of them one bit.
So there's no blame at all for Andre Johnson, even though his destination is division rival Colts.
He could have gotten more money in San Diego, but I know why he went to the Colts. He wants to show the Texans 2 times next year that he still got it. They offered him a reduced role, something like 40 receptions, because he is slowing down. I mean, when you're mid-30s receiver, you're going to slow down. And he's a competitive guy. He's been, at the top of the food chain athletically his entire life. He's transitioning to a time when that's no longer true. I can completely understand an apex predator not wanting to admit that he's no longer an apex predator. And if he's told by the team that he's called home his entire career, that he's taken less money to try to help them succeed, if they're telling him that he's no longer good at what he thinks he's good at, I do not blame him at all for going to the destination that allows him to prove them wrong.
I thought he just wanted to win an Indy for a change.
They are a playoff team. He's playing with the best quarterback
right
he's ever played with, to be honest. And, of course, yeah, he will actually finally get a win in Lucas Oil, but that's kind of, cream on top of it, I guess. But he joined them specifically to kick Bill O'Brien's ass and say, hey, I still got it. Even if it's for just 2 weeks next season, he wants to beat the Texans to rub their nose in it. Like, I'm still Andre frickin' Johnson. I'm a Hall of Fame receiver. 40 receptions is beneath me. And for a competitive guy like that, yeah, I get it. I don't harbor any ill will towards him. Let him go to the Colts, get 80 balls, maybe go far in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe even get a Super Bowl. I mean, he's got that kind of quarterback. He can go get a Super Bowl. And then he'll come back to Houston and retire. I will still love the guy. He's the greatest player in franchise history. You know, if he goes and gets a ring for the Colts, whatever.
He'll definitely still be a Texan at heart. He's very clear about that. This is more just kind of, as you said, playing out the glory days, riding off into the sunset among friends from University of Miami, and trying to just add that little extra to his legacy. Just like Frank Gore is in Indy, same reason. They want a ring and to make a little bit of money doing it. They've already got the records. Now they just need that little extra. By the way, I won a Super Bowl, to make sure they get into the Hall of Fame. And when Andre Johnson is inducted, which he will be, it'll be somebody from Houston, you know, introducing him. That is just going to be how it is. I did look at the website as soon as I heard that Andre Johnson was leaving. Like, I got to see the fan reaction, and actually it was very balanced. Most people are like the same exact viewpoint as you. I get it. This is what he wants. Couple of people like, no, you don't get to leave for the Colts. I hate you. I'm going to just destroy Indy. And that also is a rational kind of viewpoint, actually. It could be a lot worse. You could have lost Andre Johnson and signed Trent Richardson. You just let that bullet fall to the Raiders.
Well, you know, it's kind of like when you got a really hot girlfriend and she's your hot girlfriend forever. And there's this punk in your class and you hate him and he's always been better than you at everything. And then your hot girlfriend gets dissatisfied and in a fight with you, and she goes and starts dating that guy. You know, some people would react like, okay, I get it. You know, he's better than me at everything. And some would say, you know what, she wasn't that hot anyway. That's kind of the analogy for how Texans fans felt about it. The split between, you know, Andre Johnson's great, I get it, and Andre Johnson really wasn't that hot. And they're lying to themselves, but that's how they cope. They know he's great. They're just trying to make themselves feel better. And I get that viewpoint too. I don't blame them for trying to numb the pain a little bit.
So when we're talking pain, let's talk injuries. Texans, they have their fair share. Outside of the Falcons, it's the one that I kind of see as the team that kind of gets injured the most on its more, you know, star player aspect. Like every team compiles injuries, but not as much as the Texans and Falcons do at very productive positions with the biggest players on their team. We have the draft coming up. There's a lot of need for depth at certain positions for them. We've seen Arian Foster have a lot of injury concerns. You have a guy that in Alfred Blue who came in last year who played well in relief of Arian Foster. We know that they need wide receivers, inside linebackers, outside linebackers, cornerbacks, guards. Those are the more glaring issues, or if not just depth issues with the Texans. Brian Cushing's development is dropping. You have the lack of talent next to him at this point. Will the Texans be going linebacker early on, since it is possible that Jadeveon Clowney might not return to 100% by the beginning of the season, and they lost Brooks Reed to free agency? Cornerback Jonathan Joseph's contract is up after 2015, and the Texans could go for a receiver to fill that slot role in their 11 personnel. What do you kind of see in terms of the draft, and if they are going to find anything to help with the injury concerns? How are they going to fill the depth? And then also, who are the fans looking at? What do they want out of this draft?
You know, the fans are all over the place in terms of what they want, because you can throw a dart at a board with a bunch of positions on it, and they probably need all of them. There is no one hole that is bigger than every other hole. There's no obvious position that needs to be taken. It's just a little bit of this and a little bit of that all over the team. They could use the number 2 wide receiver. They could use a slot receiver. They could use another pass rushing outside linebacker to play on the strong side, because Whitney Merciless really hasn't lived up to his first round status. He's basically our version of Jordan Werner. Corner, I think is less of a need now that Kareem Jackson's re-signed. Right tackle is less of a need, but they still need depth along the entire offensive line, basically. You look at safety. DJ Swearinger continues to tackle without using his arms. Inside linebacker needs depth. I mean, defensive end across from J.J. Watt, might need to be addressed since Jared Crick's going into his contract season. He might go get a contract somewhere else as a really good 2-gapping 5-technique defensive end. I mean, you name a position, and they could take it, to be honest. And so it's almost kind of liberating, because last season you're basically just looking at a total of 4, maybe 5 different players that even had the possibility of being a first overall pick. And now, 16th overall, you're in the middle of the first round. You could take virtually any position. You know, the options are there for anybody. I mean, I think Amari Cooper could drop that far. You look at Jalen Strong, Devontae Parker, Bud Dupree is a popular name on Battle Red Block as a more athletic version of Brooks Reed, basically. You look at Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley. I mean, it's wide open, more wide open than I can remember it being in years, and that's very exciting to me.
Definitely a lot of talent in the first round. Maybe not a whole lot of top 5 kind of quality players, but there's a heck of a lot of top 15 quality players. And so, yeah, Houston is going to get somebody who, I mean, obviously it's a crapshoot no matter who you draft, but definitely going to have the option to get somebody that everybody expects to be a wild success for years to come. So we know it's very early, draft hasn't happened, but let's look ahead to 2015 and where you think that season is going to end. In the AFC, I think the Texans have a very good shot at making the playoffs because the AFC is not very competition heavy, and the Texans, I mean, they made 9-7. They're a good team. Heck, they could be the division winner for all I know. What is it going to really take, though, to make this team a perennial playoff contender?
I think it's going to take Ryan Mallett being the quarterback that I know he can be. And I think he will be there. I think by the middle of next season, you're going to have people talking about him as really, really one of the top flight guys in the league. I'm not going to say elite, but I think he is going to put up production and put up results similar to a lot of the upper tier guys out there. I really believe in him that deeply. DeAndre Hopkins going into year 3 is a stud as the new number 1 wide receiver. You hope that they get him a compliment in the draft. I know they just signed Cecil Shorts in free agency, but I mean, his hamstrings are basically made of toilet paper, so I have zero faith in that working out. The offensive line is stronger than it's been in probably the last 4 years. J.J. Watt is still J.J. Watt. You hope Jadeveon Clowney is coming back healthy. I think the pieces are starting to come together. The pieces are starting to come together as long as Ryan Mallett plays at the level that I know he can. I think probably when Andre Johnson comes home to Houston and the Colts visit H-Town, that's a primetime game guaranteed. It's going to be a bloodbath. You got 2 loaded AFC South teams going at it for a division crown. I think the Texans are probably deeper than the Colts, but the Colts have the edge and really the position that matters, which is quarterback. And that offense is going to be so much fun to watch. And I'm talking about Indianapolis here. And going up against the Texans defense that is equally loaded, I cannot wait for that. They're going to be battling for the division all year long. It's going to be a joy to watch.
That actually will be a good matchup this year. And I'm finally of the opinion that I can watch the Colts without, you said earlier, you watched and you're like, you're confident. I was not confident this entire year, not because I don't believe in Andrew Luck. Obviously, I mean, why would you not? But there was Trent Richardson in the backfield. And now, I mean, like Frank Gore, whatever, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but just he's not Trent Richardson. That's all that I cared about. Looking at the schedule for the Texans, it's actually quite favorable. Really, the toughest teams that Houston looks to face is Indianapolis, New England, and Carolina and Cincinnati. I mean, those were the playoff quality teams. Everybody else on the schedule failed to make the playoffs. So this is definitely something that has got to have you excited. Where do you see the team finishing wins and losses this year?
I think that they have a very good shot at 10 plus wins. I would be more confident in them getting 10 or more wins than I would with them getting less than 10 wins. Not only because I think the schedule is slightly favorable. The AFC East, I think, is going to be a lot better this year. But the team itself is better. they have another year under their belt together. They're adding some good pieces in free agency. They retained all of their top free agents, which is even more important. The road to the playoffs is going to go through Indy, obviously. If they don't beat them, they're not going, at least not as a division winner. But it's very doable. I think 10 wins is very, very doable. Injury-free, granted, but you could say that about every team. So I'm excited about the season. I think it's going to be the first time in a few years that they're able to get back into the postseason and hopefully make some noise. But, the AFC is as top-heavy as ever. It's always top-heavy. It's just never deep. So we'll see how far they can get, but just getting to the postseason at all would be a blessing for me, because going from a postseason team to 2-14 was not nice, and I'd really like to see January Texans football again.
We're pressing time here, so we're gonna have to get close to wrapping up here, and I apologize. I don't want to kind of rush you through, but I'm gonna have to. So real quick, I'm gonna open up the floor for you. Go ahead and tell us about the blog. Tell us your Twitter. Tell us where the fans can find you, what the other things you're working on, and then I'll release you to Kyle so you guys can banter as much as you want.
Oh God, that dick. Well, I write for Battle Red.
Yes.
I write for Battle Red Blog. It's part of the SB Nation network. It's the biggest Texans fan-run site. On the web, we talk all things Texans. We give a fan perspective, but we also try to explain it in a manner that the team might be coming from as well. We do film breakdowns. We do polls. I mean, every aspect of Texans news that you can imagine, we're on it. So if you ever get behind with the team, pop over to Battle Red Blog, read a few articles, and you'll be caught up immediately. Obviously, we tear our hair out together during the season as a community. The game threads can get kind of wild because everybody's losing their mind at the exact same time, which kind of adds to the hype. Especially if you're watching games alone normally, it's good to have a whole bunch of other Texans fans to go through the painstaking process with. As a side project of mine that I also do some stuff for the blog, I have a video channel on YouTube. You can look for Brett Kollman's YouTube channel. I do a lot of very, very, very in-depth film breakdowns. They're usually 10 to 15 minutes long or so, but they cover very specific topics. And I like to try to teach the game as much as I can to get the fans more educated. And so when they're more educated, they can talk about football more, and they love the game more because they understand it more. And the more people know about football, the more they'll enjoy it. That's what I've always found. So that's a side project that I love doing. You can follow me on Twitter at Brett Kollman to get all the updates for both Battle Red Blog and for the YouTube channel. And I think that's about all I got going on right now. I'm a pretty boring person.
Obviously, I love it when somebody comes on and pokes fun more at Kyle than at me, because that makes me feel good about myself. I would like to possibly do something where, like, maybe this season we do a Texans game, maybe a Colts and Texans game, where we all three get on and maybe do a little live show during the game. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. Provided I'm not, working at the network at the time. I think a couple of years ago, the only game I actually watched from home was the Super Bowl, believe it or not. I was working every other game of the entire season. But if I'm not at the network during that game, I would absolutely love to. That'd be a joy.
It'd be awesome. I would really like that, because one of two things is going to happen. Either Kyle's going to just be saddened to the point where he'll go jump into a glacier crevice in Alaska, or it'll be something where he just makes a complete ass of himself at being just pompous. So
more likely me making an ass of myself.
So it would just be
if I'm watching it from home, you're just going to hear me get progressively drunker and drunker as the game goes on. So it might be age appropriate for the first 30 minutes, and then after 5 shots or so, it's just going to be very not safe for work. So I apologize in advance if that happens.
Yeah, well, that's what explicit tags are for. So we can always put our warnings on it. Yeah, I have all sorts of censoring sound effects, quacks and goats and all sorts. I love animals for some reason to censor people. It's fun. Kyle, did you have anything else? Did you want to make fun of him more, or receive any more punishment?
Oh, we can definitely do more of that. Very potentially off the air, and then maybe just share a few gems on the show. But no, the Texans are a team that despite being a division rival, you have to respect them. They put in all the hard work and all the effort and all that. And yeah, if they had a better quarterback situation, it would be a lot easier to seriously phone. God damn it. I'm sitting here trying to be nice. Ruins it. Yeah, the Texans are good. Whatever. Fine. It ruined it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Brett. And we'll talk a little bit more after this. Wrap up and have a good one. All right.
You too, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Once again, everyone, that was Brett Kollman, amazingly talented writer and genuinely cool dude from Battle Red Blog. I had a great time talking to this guy. I'm really excited to have him on again. I think we just need to have him on at random. He's a fun guy, man.
Well, especially when we start having training camp stuff. I mean, he watches a lot of tape.
Yeah,
we can get him on to go over some of the, what our questions are for certain players, certain positions on certain teams. He goes over quite a bit, and that's great. Especially, he has that NFL connection and stuff. It'll be great to have him on. And I think what we might do is I'm going to try and maybe extend the hand out in case, he could be a guest host and stuff sometimes. Maybe
he could definitely jam that out. He's got a great knowledge base and the kind of fun energy. Yeah, we could talk with that guy just so people know, like when you end your show and a guy hangs around and then we just BS for like 45 minutes, that's a good sign. That means it went well for all involved. Especially because he's like, did you guys know this hidden secret about this NFL player? And we're like, oh my God, no, I didn't know. It's so amazing. And then, yeah, that's awesome. He told me some very scary things about Peyton Manning, none of which I will repeat, but all of which you will now speculate on.
That particular conversation was very, very interesting to me. I had never heard a single bit of that. And I don't think many people in the public really know any bit of that.
Anything negative about Peyton Manning gets hushed up with that Papa John money. So, yeah, let's not get too deep into that. Let's not get him in trouble. I thought he was a cool dude. My personal favorite part of the interview, though, was when I reminded him that the Texans were so close to getting Teddy Bridgewater. And, like, God, how quickly would that team have turned around with a franchise quarterback like Bridgewater? And I mean, that would have been the best draft in decades if they had snagged them. And even then, they still made out like bandits last year. Just injury concerns.
Yeah, and I mean, if they had been able to get Clowney, and Clowney had, in some way, the universe had tilted where he had actually been healthy and been productive, and then you had J.J. Watt and Bridgewater and Arian Foster, and you have all of that supporting cast. I mean, that team probably... It could have been the first time that the Texans win in Indy, which is, funny because you also made reference to the fact that Andre Johnson went to the Colts so that he could win in Lucas Oil, which is, of course, hilarious.
And true.
But to all of the fans from Battle Red Blog joining us today to listen to Brett, thank you so much for doing so. Don't be afraid to check out our actual show, not just the interviews. footballisamerica.com. You can check out our show there. We do the show weekly. We normally have the show up right around between the Tuesday and Wednesday time frame. You can check it out there. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Reddit, all of those places.
iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher. You can subscribe to us. You can get us downloaded onto your phone, your tablet, whatever. We are available in a great many ways.
Yeah, just about any medium that you have that does podcasts, we're there. At FBIA Podcast is our Twitter. Facebook.com/FootballIsAmerica Podcast. Go anywhere. Comment anywhere. Tell us how much you liked it, how much you hated it.
Tell me all the ways in which the Colts are terrible. I will probably agree with most of them.
And there's always the good old trusty default of just bringing up the name Trent Richardson. Whenever Kyle gets mad on the forum and he wants to respond to something, your immediate response, if you don't want to, really put any time or thought into anything, is just type Trent Richardson into the bar and click submit. And then Kyle will just be like, well, he'll pull a Levi Damian and say, what do you want me to say?
Yep. There have been far too many times where I'll be like, oh, here I am. Interesting point. Oh, counterpoint. No, I got that covered with very logical argument, and now I am correct, and I have just airtight, super defense right now. And then all I just get back in response, off topic, just Richardson, like, God damn it. All right, well, I lost this one.
Well, that's going to be it. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the military, of course. We appreciate all of you. You're a big part of our fan base.
We want you to come home safe and happy, to your families, to your friends, to your loved ones, and to us.
Absolutely. So, well, that's going to be it. You got anything else, Kyle?
I love JJ Watt.
We all love JJ Watt.
How do you not?
All right. Well, have a good night.
Take care.